Okay, so here we are midway through turn 4. I basically took a break through most of yesterday and today. Computer issues, essentially. And actually, I can't load this up because I'm trying to repair a hard drive. Anyway, I may have lost all my old videos. Luckily, they're pretty much on YouTube. Alright, so, not that I download them now, but anyway. We started off the Ottomans continuing their siege here of, what is this, Singeta? I don't know how to pronounce that, but they're outnumbered in terms of number of dice, and they took 3 casualties to 2, decided to start building up some regulars in Belgrade and try to increase their commitment. But it's really hard for them to progress with a large German army in place there. They may leave a masking force and try to go for something simpler, or maybe capture some of this territory, but that's not valuable. They really want to clear their way to Prague. That's the only valuable thing in their way, but they want to get these fortresses out of the way. They can't really allow the Germans to be free to handle stuff as well. And then for the Spaniards, and this is actually why I started this video, jumped into the vid, they march down to Naples, laying siege to it. They've got a problem if the Turkish fleet moves in to prevent that siege. That's something they're going to have to worry about if need be. They've got a couple of fleets in place, but not as much as the Turks do. However, they also played, and this is the first time I saw one of these, they've got a couple of these, a treasure to draw a card. Again, I'm not sure if these treasures can just be turned in at any time, or if they have to be turned in as part of a card play. I've been doing them as part of a card play because I didn't want to look it up, but there's so many now in their hands that, do assigned, put a there was a patronage one, I think. Now there's the draw card. Just a lot of little ones that aren't the standard, you must play this with a card because it's points, so I'm not sure. I probably should look it up at some point. Anyway, onward. So I was correct in my interpretation, and the French pushed Villegnon. He gets a free colony here, sailing through Guinea Coast and into here. You might ask, well, why is he bringing a colony there? Well, he gets one for free. Okay, why is he there if he's not pirating or whatever and he paid the points? Well, the truth there is the French are holding a mandatory card for the Spanish treasure fleet, which will give them a shot, the way they've set up with 2 admirals or sea captains out there, to be able to get a pretty good shot at capturing it. We'll see how it actually winds out. It's possible, I think it can also come out this way, I'm not sure, but these are the most likely. This covers 2/3 of the options, and that's their intended next play. The English succeeded in their siege of Edinburgh. They didn't spend other points on that. They blew the rest of their points. Well, they patronized an artist. They used a treasure for that, and built some more, another set of ships. Building up their forces. They probably should take the rest of Scotland. I think there's an advantage to owning territories in this. I'm not terribly sure what. If they're not keys, what are they really worth? There's some possibility in some areas that they're important, but up in North Scotland, you might as well just leave them, I think. But it is a little annoying to see those Protestant spaces. Maybe they can be used, as an easier entrance into England. I don't know. But it's pretty low priority, to tell you the truth. Edinburgh is the important space there. And let's see. The Germans played a card to get Tycho Brahe and his silver nose onto the chart. And then the Dutch, well, they concluded their siege of Mons and then shifted over to Dunkirk. They're ignoring Lille, interestingly enough, not a fortress yet, and just trying to grab these fortresses, because those, even though they're not worth anything victory point wise, are kind of important in terms of slowing the enemy down, keeping him from getting easily into, say, Brussels, which would be an obnoxious place for the Spaniards to get to. He might also want to pad things with those empty spaces, but he wanted to rush up and grab that siege while he could. Eventually, he's got to go up to Amsterdam and get that last key. Let's see, we had a victory point swing from the Dutch-English situation as well, and you can see the Dutch have been brought more into line. All right, onward. Okay, here, continuing on rather slowly, the Turks continued their siege of Zigeta, pulled more forces in, emptying the garrison at Belgrade. Still having a hard time of it, trading off hits. They've got one card left. They're going to spend it. It's just they've expended so much on this siege. But I noticed something in the rules that I had forgotten. You don't have to sit on a space in this game to convert control. You can do it if you're adjacent as long as there's no enemy units. Happened to look that up accidentally when I was trying to look up, and that's the same as Here I Stand. Trying to look up what happens if that fleet ends up being pushed out. But again, there's a lot of little rules in this, and it's different, you know, from most other CDGs, and most of them are different from one another. Yeah. Just pointing that out again, I know it's the obvious. Anyway, the Turks ended up ignoring the siege at Naples, and they've lost that, and the victory points that went with it, and Taranto. And the Spaniards are continuing their turn with these draw card shits, which are just huge because they're able to like do stuff and extend their turn with it. Pretty impressive. Okay, so the English played a big card and set Drake sailing, heading through the South Atlantic, which he passed through. Went through Cape Horn, no problems with his big navigation. Got here, and he had enough points. He could have gotten as far as the South Pacific, but he decided to pause here. If he had moved into the Mexican coast, he wouldn't have enough to do a piracy, so he did his piracy here, a little riskier because of the fortress. Ended up getting 2 hits, which meant he got a treasure and a victory point off the Spaniards, and that's marked over there with the victory point. The treasure, when Drake, and if Drake returns, but he should, and he's probably going to get the +1 victory point for the second circumnavigation in this game. And then the French played this treasure fleet, and that's why I'm here, so that I can roll this out and see where it hits. The French are set up to take a couple of the locations that are likely, and we'll see how this works. 3, it's the Antilles, and indeed they've got a fleet there, so let's see what happens. The English are not in place, so they can't try to redirect it. That's the first issue. The French, or the Spaniards, get an additional treasure. Actually, they're going to be sending the weakest treasures home on this fleet. Not because the French rolled, but because they don't want to... they see how likely it is the French would get a hit, and they don't really need these treasures. Alright, let's see. Now, the expedition can attack. It has no cost. If more than one power has an expedition, resolve the attacks and impulse power. 1 base die, 2 at full strength. I had the piracy rating of the sea captain. He's a 1. Any other? The treasure fleet gets 1, plus 1 additional fleet, and you subtract hits, 5s or 6s. The French got 1 hit, they're going to get 1 of these treasures. They're both the same, so it doesn't really matter. I'll just give them 1. Now that treasure, I believe, is going to go, and this is indeed what the Spanish are going to give them. Who gets to choose? I think the expedition, and the expedition gets to choose. So he'll take a victory point rather than those treasures. Victory point's definitely more valuable. And I get a piracy victory point that gets marked here, and I gotta grab myself a little counter for that. I would have hoped for more, but that's not bad. And you could say, well, do they know about this? I don't know. Alright, so they get the piracy victory point. Do they get a piracy marker in the space? I don't think so. Now Spain is going to get the treasures. back on their card. This is gone, and the French are going to get 2 action points, which I have no idea what they're going to do with. Well, ran into a couple more little oddities where I was probably cheating. For example, in the patronized box, I had 2 artists there. There can't be 2. I think one was a carryover, still working from last turn or whatever. I allowed the Germans to keep El Greco there. Basically, neither one had a German marker under it, so I don't know if they really were or not, but I think they were. I don't think anybody else has been throwing Italian artists in. If they have, well, no matter what, somebody got screwed, and I have no idea who, although it's likely the Germans. And they spent their points building extra troops up, and then I noticed I got these over here in Pressburg. They must have fallen over. They were in Vienna. No way I was defending Pressburg that heavily. I was like, oh, whoa, if Vienna's open, I had to just walk in, right? And then the Dutch, well, I spent a 2-point card, conquered Dunkirk, and then realized, wow, I can't actually move to Flushing. There's no movement. But this is my first port location, so I grabbed Lille instead. And these damn things, I grabbed Lille instead. And now I'm going to have to build a navy and slide up and siege some of this northern stuff because it's just too expensive to walk up there. I might as well get a boat out of it, right? Okay. And I guess we're on to the next turn. Try to deal with that guy lying down there because these things are really a pain in the butt. And let's talk about these stands because most of the CDGs have them. But in this particular game, and to some extent here I stand as well, there's these weird stacks like this that are just really, really tough. My broken ass camera. Really tough to cope with. You know, where you have a big square counter, a bunch of rectangular boats, a circle, another smaller square, and on top of that all you gotta balance this dude. And dude doesn't quite is a little too loose in all these things. You see a lot of them are cocked, so the unbalanced stuff, when I try to wedge them in with the paper and everything. If you don't wedge them in with the paper, they just fall over automatically if the pieces are there. So that combination is what makes this one particularly bad. There's also clutter with having too many of them in too close an area. It's hard to reach in here and get at them, but that's not too bad. What really is bad is the combination of the physical attributes of these particular ones, as well as the game's counterpieces. I should probably switch to plain old squares. They do really help make where the forces are jump out to you, though. Towards the end of the last time around, the Dutch played The Death of King Sebastian. That brings Portugal into the game. Now, I didn't realize they weren't in the game. I thought that they could be diplomatically influenced. This just opens them up as a mandatory event out of the game that does that. The Turks finally took, on their last card, Zingedfar. To do it, they denuded Buda, but there really is nothing left for the Germans. The Germans are out of troops. Their leader's been captured. They're in serious trouble here. Yeah, Vienna fell. Okay. And for the Spaniards, they looked at, hey, I've been moving Duke of Parma up. I'm not sure that makes sense. I can just build the Duke of Alva some mercenaries and send him up into the Netherlands. Use the Duke of Parma maybe to try to prosecute the war against the Turks or something next turn. Let's get things moving because the Dutch are the ones who are in the lead now. Yes, the Empire may have some advantages, but we'll not worry too much about that at this point. Okay, on to the rest of the powers. Well, the English attempt at circumnavigation failed. They tried to go from the Mexican coast across to the South Pacific, and Drake died on the way. It's pretty harsh, but yeah, got an eliminated result, and that's tough. I mean, he's got +3 to the table. That was a 6. Let me make sure they don't have +2 science, espionage, free colony. Yeah, they do not have. The telescope would have helped there. What a shame. As we continue on, we see Spain and France suppressing heresies. France clearing out that Huguenot influence as much as they can. And the Spaniards, though, willing to trigger lots of unrest. Basically, they got 3 1s in order to get a deep conversion, and they're actually kind of happy with some of that unrest because this is screwing up the Dutch supply situation. They're in a bit of trouble there, and I'm going to have to look up and see what that's going to do exactly, because I think they can winter here in Dunkirk if they have 4 or less pieces, but it does cause some definite issues for them, and they may have to try to suppress that unrest. Well, I think we're done. The Spanish are losing a 1-point treasure this turn. They don't want to spend their last card. They can hold, 2 with Philip, but they only have 1 left. They've been trying to spend them all, but they got to Brascanson. That allows them to leave 4 units there, basically. And then they can, of course, do a repositioning with more units if need be. We can see what happens. They've got actually 6 mercenaries there, which is, had some hopes of pushing further in, but everything's pretty much Dutch. They don't have any place to base themselves. If they moved 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they just couldn't get to their own stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's no place they can go to be safe. So they kind of screwed up in their play, and they're holding off on that. The French and the Dutch have been playing ping pong with the religious rules. French converting some more. Then the Dutch played, of course, their home card finally, and they had to get that out of their hand before the end of the turn, converting a lot of the French and Dutch areas over. We should be calling them the Protestants, but they look Dutch to me because, you know, most of the pieces on the board are orange right now. Anyway, I don't know if I mentioned, but the English did some conversion over in Scotland. Well, converting territories to their holding. There's only 1 Scottish actual area, and it's in unrest, which I think means that the Scots can't build any troops there right now. That's one big advantage to asserting English control there. Scotland is pretty much falling to England because of this. All right, on to the end of the turn cleanups, and I'll probably come back once more. And after returning to home areas, Spaniards clustering at Milan because they're looking at 2 directions against the Turks as well as against the Dutch, for example. We've got sort of, this is the ground situation in play. Now in terms of victory points, well, marriages, first of all, the Dutch succeeded in their marriage. They ended up getting another little marriage token there. Some of the patronage charts, the Germans took a... I noticed the Germans forgot to use their mercenaries diplomatically last turn. They could have given those to the Spaniards, pretty much as in, hey, Spain, you're helping us, right? They chose not to. At this point, Spain will probably demand it, if I can remember, because they need the troops. They need the extra troops to go after the Turks, especially in Central Europe. Anyway, getting aside from that, the patronage charts were resolved. Got some points there. Some disappeared. The Germans took off of that the Ravelin advantage, which gives them a bonus as a defender in sieges from now on. They get an extra die. They really need this. If they're going to gain some ground, they want to be able to hold on to it. It's obvious they can't face the Turks as they stand. What we're seeing, though, if you look at the victory points, the French have gained quite a bit through a number of means, one of which is, hey, we're still holding Paris, man. And, you know, that's kind of an interesting situation. Both the Dutch and both the Protestants and the French are doing quite well at this moment. Are they ahead? Well, probably not, because this German victory point is probably pretty close to theirs, actually. And you'd say, wow, the empire's like hosed. How is this happening? Well, yeah, they're getting the patronage and everything. This game isn't necessarily all about the military side of things. So if they're seeing a Protestant victory as their choice, and we know they're not, they're 3 points higher and actually in the lead. If they're looking at the balanced choice, they're tied for the lead. So this is an interesting situation. It's a close game at this point. I don't think anybody feels that any particular power is hugely in the lead. The Spaniards have their own interests to protect, though. They're at war with the Protestants, the Dutch Protestants, and they can definitely prosecute that. They're at war with the Turks, and they can prosecute that if they can achieve the alliance with the Empire. And I think their requirement for that will be the additional mercenaries to go conduct that war. They'll probably send the larger Duke of Parma army in that direction under those conditions and send Alva up to cope with the Dutch. Alternatively, though, they've got Algiers they could go move for, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad choice either. They can't, I forgot about this, they can't do a spring deployment this way because of that pass, which kind of makes the Spanish road painful. Maybe they should have left their leader sitting there. It's going to be... It's going to be real tough to engage otherwise. And they're going to have a hard route anyway going through German territory if the French don't give them an alliance. The French might, simply to allow them passage through Metz so that the Spaniards are concentrating on the Protestant Dutch. Alright, I'm going to load this one up. It's taken longer than I thought. More babbling than it should have.